Welcome in to the latest NFL podcast by the Betting Pitch Podcast Network. I'm your host, real underscore G Warner, joined by at A underscore Schnicker. We went 1-1 on our best bet last weekend. Stay tuned for a six-pack of NFL football games, and we're going to go through, find some betting angles on the primetime games, plus two of our choice. We finally don't have a London matchup to wake up for, and wish we were asleep. At A underscore Schnicker, how are you doing on this beautiful Tuesday evening?
I'm feeling great. Disappointed that the Packers won by two. We talked about, I think last week I gave out Packers. At that point, it was -3, but we knew it was going to drop again. A little bit of a battle on that one. I was able to grab it at 2.5, but does not matter. Either way, it's a loss. Um,
Tell
Feel
me
like
what
I had the,
you were talking to me about. No more key numbers. I don't know if that was an emotion thing because, of course, NFL
it
puts you on
was,
tilt more than anything, which definitely happened to me. The things I was saying about the officials, which I mean, no surprise on any at the real underscore G Warner tweet. I'm sure everyone's heard it loud and clear, and I'm finding new ways to insult these officials that I'll never see in real life because I'm not sure that they leave their grandmother's basement except for when they're actually on TV making game-changing calls. But you said something to the effect of, and I'm curious about it because I feel like key numbers are a little bit different now with home field advantage being 2.5 points or maybe 2 points compared to the always three that we kind of grew up with. What were you, I guess, thinking about? Because I mean, it was amazing seeing the Lions and the Vikings is a really close game that came down to multiple field goals down the stretch and was nowhere near a three. And was honestly on the looked like the Lions might lose by one as a 1.5 point underdog, which
yeah,
would have
yeah,
been good for you and bad for my bet at the close. But tell me a little
right.
bit more what you're thinking.
Well, so I think this actually would be a fun exercise for us. Maybe not fun for other people, but for us, I think it would be. If we could like grab all the matchups that were within that 1-2 spreads and to see where those, or even threes, and see where those games landed this year. This is just a hunch based off of watching every single game. I think we would be seeing three. It would not be landing three as likely, or would not be landing three as often. And so when we're getting into these super tight margins of 1.5 points, 2.5, where we used to just kind of be like, doesn't matter, it's going through the zero, who cares? There's some really consequential games and decisions happening on those ones and twos because of the decisions to go for 2 point conversions, the change in the extra point for the distance, and just other sorts of game state that's, I think, pushing coaches to go for it more often, um, which can just really leave you exposed on a really good bet that you think you made. And one, it really is defined by one 2 point conversion play, whether that it's successful or not, is the difference in a game. And I don't know about you, but I don't like losing that way. So yes, I was obviously not happy in that moment, but it could be worth considering if, there are certainly charts out there you can look at for money line value. If you're getting a -2 and the money line's at, I think, what, 135 or below, like it's better value to go with the money line in that circumstance. Um, we need to do more data, but it wasn't that moment of like, I feel like we're seeing this a lot more often, and maybe it's worth looking into.
We'll get our intern at A Brooks Bets on it, and we will come to you with it. Hopefully, an update on next week's show. Thank you for listening at A Brooks Bets. He's one of our most loyal listeners and a member of my
My
Major League
man.
Baseball podcast on this Betting the Pitch feed. If you're not subscribed to it, the real underscore G Warner on YouTube, also on Instagram, please do so. And if you're not following us on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, go hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and make sure you don't miss any of our content coming out because we predict where lines are going to move. And we also give you winners. We are off to a good start this season. 8-6 is our year to date, our YTD. We've won 20 of our last 32 for a 63% run. So we're still profitable, still making everyone money, and looking forward to increasing that as we move forward. So we'll start on this, I guess, episode, this week 8 episode of the NFL podcast sponsored by Betting the Pitch. With the Minnesota Vikings a 3-point favorite on the road at the Los Angeles Rams. Total is 48 in this one. We've seen some movement, a fair amount of movement, I would say, in this number. I am now just basically watching look ahead numbers every chance I can. It was 3 down to 2.5, but then I saw a 3.5 ever after these games were played. Maybe as a result of Minnesota playing Detroit very tough and having a lead late, plus maybe the 10-0 start. Maybe it's about the Los Angeles Rams struggling against the Las Vegas Raiders. What do you think about this matchup in a what's likely to me to be a neutral field type of event as opposed to Los Angeles Rams home game because their crowds don't seem to matter?
We got Rams in an underdog spot. Sean McVay, I feel like he pays attention to these numbers. His game plans are different when he's an underdog. Um, but this team, how much did you watch of that Raiders Rams game, or were you locked in on the?
There was only 3 games on, so I actually didn't go to the bar this weekend, which is disappointing. My neck's probably going to be pissed at me all week for it, but I did have the 3 NFL games all
Okay,
on, and there wasn't a lot of competition. I mean, the Chiefs Niners was wild. We'll get to that, I think, a little bit later on the show. We might,
yeah,
but anyway, I watched a fair amount of it. Seemed like the Raiders were making their decision, so I don't know how that reflects on the Rams.
yeah. Okay, so I'm just not impressed at all with the Rams' run defense. I had high hopes. And to be fair, you're starting some guys on the defensive line that are rookies. I'm not just going to write them off after 7 games, but it's definitely been a jolt to the system in terms of the run defense. I would look at this game and think of the Vikings, not necessarily that they blitz a ton, but Brian Flores is still going to get all the flowers, in my opinion. And the
Uh,
way that he can
I mean, he
simulate
should
blitz,
based on the translation.
do what?
He should based on the translation because Flores is
Flores
flowers in
flowers.
Espanol. See.
There you go. And so when Las Vegas was able to put, I mean, they weren't really even blitzing all that often. They were able to get a lot of pressure on Stafford. Um, this is a fun matchup, at least to me. Like both of these coaches, it's not a mismatch there. That's what I love to see. Um, I just think the Vikings to me are one of the best teams in the NFC. I think what we saw Sunday may have been a preview of a postseason matchup in the future. What do you think about this one?
I do like the Vikings. We've been backing them a lot this season. I think that isn't something that's changed. I'm not really. I mean, it was a tough loss, but going up 10-0, if I could have that on a small like -1.5 or
Yeah,
-1 favorite, if you got a good number, I'll take that every day. Especially for them to lead late, and if they get that 2-point conversion, maybe they go to overtime and win there. I think I learned more about the Lions that they just continue to get a ton of respect more than I expect, and I think they deserve it. So I think that's more than I've learned about fading the Vikings. I think I'm still on board with the Vikings. I think they play really well. I think Brian Flores deserves all those flowers, whether it's in Espanol or in Inglés. But I think ultimately Sam Darnold looked fine to me, which could have been a tough matchup and maybe would have been different if the Lions were healthier, but that's not something to really talk about now. I think the Vikings are good. I think this is a good spot for them to go play a not really road game, kind of more of a neutral site on a Thursday. It's a really tough turnaround from a tough division matchup with one of the best teams in football, a physical one at that. So I could certainly see some interest in backing the Rams. It's a long flight. At least the Rams get to sleep in their own beds. That means something. I'm not sure the crowd noise will be there, and I'm not really sure the Vikings fan base is that strong to make this a huge environment like a Packers or Pittsburgh Steelers type of travel to Vegas or any of the LA teams would be. But I'm not really a road favorite type usually. I've done a little bit more added to my portfolio a little bit more this season to mix results so far. But I feel like the Thursday night football under run has been completely fallen off the tracks,
yeah, it's
and
done.
I'm not sure I'm getting involved this one because I do think both teams can move the ball, and I've got a lot of questions about the Rams defense. That probably keeps me away. We'll move now to Sunday night football. Going to do Monday night, and then we will go with 3 picks this week for our other choices, which is really nice because we get to actually talk about games we're not force fed into discussing. So on the beautiful October 27th, best day in the year, I'll go to Sunday
Is
night
that your
football.
birthday, Griffin?
It is my birthday. I'll be 36 years old, assuming I make it 5 more days. We'll see if I actually get there. I know a lot of people are gunning for me, so we'll see if I can actually get there. But on Sunday, we have the Dallas Cowboys. Wow, what a birthday treat for me in this beautiful D little A double L A S town that I reside in. The Cowboys, a 4.5 point underdog on the road at San Francisco. Total is 46 and a half in this one. And before we get into your thoughts, the number has moved quite a bit, to say the least. A lot of injuries involved in that. I saw the Cowboys pretty much a 7 point underdog for all of last week with look ahead numbers, total at 48 and a half. That's fallen all the way down to 4.5 and 46 and a half, as I just said. So that's a pretty big move, but that happens when Ayuk tears his ACL and Debo Samuel's just ate a big full chocolate cake on the sideline, is puking the whole time. Thank you for my fantasy team. Him and Jaden Daniels going out was a really fun Sunday for me, for my, I guess, only good team, but LOL on that. What do we got about the Cowboys coming off a bye week? I mean, best position you could ever be in if you're the Dallas Cowboys, even though they've sucked this year.
Yeah. Yeah, and the buy is certainly cooked into some of this. Um, the 49ers without any receivers and really um, Brock Purdy not making the steps that I think some people thought he was going to make this year. Um, we can go back in time to about around this time last year when these two teams met the exact same place. And I
Similar
think
spread.
yeah, you and I took either 3.5 or 4 um,
And it was not a
on the
sweat. There
and
was
on the
no, it was
49ers.
I wish they were
And
all
so
that
like
way.
here's my we talk about this every week. My um I'm standing firm on fading the 49ers this year. So far, that's been good. Um, both these teams are worse than they were at this time last year. That's pretty obvious, right?
I agree.
By a pretty far margin.
Hard hitting analysis coming from the Betting the Pitch soccer and baseball named podcast network that also discusses NFL football. But I mean, we are 8-6 this year and have won 63% of our best bets last 16 episodes. So that's pretty
We
good.
we might have a slight branding problem with the different names going different places,
Well,
but
good luck finding another way to host these things. Keep going.
okay, so it still is going to go back to the coaches on the sidelines.
Big mismatch.
Yeah, it's not that doesn't change. That doesn't and if Jawan Jennings plays, there are some pieces. By the way, I really like Jacob Cowing. I don't know how they'll make this work because Cowing's more of the slot guy. Jawan Jennings has been feasting in that spot. So you're gonna have to mix and match some pieces around. I think Debo's gonna play. Um, right? Is that
I,
so? Have
I,
you heard
I
like something
mean,
different?
if I start him, there's a good chance he won't, but or at least will be active and then all of a sudden
I
not play a single play.
I just like I feel like we're
I
gonna be in
can't
the
imagine
same
that's a two
spot
week
again, man.
stomach bug. I don't know. I know tummy aches are tough things in this world, but I don't think those last 2 weeks.
Griffin, I think we're gonna be in the same spot as we were last year.
You're going to be back in San Francisco, 4.5 point favorite at home.
Um, well, I see that we may be able to get to that to a 4, and then we're
I
talking
mean, it's certainly trending that direction. I would
we're
expect
gonna then we're
money.
talking close to movie bet situation. You know what I
Ooh,
mean?
where if you push on 4, at least you save some money. Whereas if you pay for a movie, you never get the
Yes.
money back.
You
Um,
get you enjoy the
I actually
entertainment for 3 hours, and that's that.
I don't even know if it's gonna be entertainment. I gotta say, I don't know what it is in me, but I like the Cowboys in this one actually.
Really?
Weird as it
Why?
sounds. They've looked terrible, and I am not at all trying to let that go because I had to watch it out at a bar with an entire stands Blue Notes screaming at the TV, except for one bartender going nuts every time the Cowboys got a first down when they were down 40 points. It's like, dude, shut up. Like I wish I hadn't tipped you already because I would definitely take that into consideration. But just kidding, tip your bartenders, servers, everything. But I feel like the 49ers are too banged up. I mean, Debo Samuel is great, and when I see him active, that changes things quite a bit. Until we see that, though, I feel like we saw a lot from Purdy this past weekend. Um, I don't know that the Chiefs defense, which I think is good, I don't know that it was that great, but he was just literally serving up turnovers. as if it was a fall football game, which I guess it is. I don't know that I trust Dak Prescott at all, and I don't trust the Cowboys rush defense, especially because I'm not really sure about Micah Parsons. I didn't call him Chandler this time. Good for me.
And
Um, but it feels like a big price. I understand it's been dropping and that a lot of the value has been sucked out of it so far, but there's still a lot of room for the Cowboys to lose and cover here, coming off a bye week. And I'm wondering if the Brock Purdy contract has lost $20 million in the last week or something like that. Well, they still got to pay him, I'm assuming.
yeah,
But and Ayuk isn't a huge loss, but does stretch the field a little bit, and I think that doesn't really reflect in a box score, so that means something. The running back situation is definitely a downgrade, easiest position to replace, but ultimately, to me, not having McCaffrey and honestly, the Mason hasn't been great. And I got like I feel like there's some troubles here. I might have said the wrong running back's last name, but my bad if I did that. I don't even know what I just said, but I think at this point I lean to the Cowboys, but we'll see if that actually makes the Sunday night card, or at least I click bet or
I
confirm.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's all. That's all I got. Go.
Before you just finished there, I felt like you were still making a case for the 49ers.
Well,
Everything we were talking about was just how bad the Cowboys, how they can't
I
stop the
don't
run.
mean to be. I really don't mean to be. And I'm honestly trying my best not to back these underdogs because that's where I've had the least amount of success is
Yeah.
being like this price does not make sense. And I maybe it does make sense because the market is saying that that's what the price should be and markets are efficient. But a lot of times it feels to me is that the team I'm backing is so bad that it doesn't really matter how not good the team I'm fading is. That there just seems to be a big delineation between good teams and bad teams, and I'm going to try my best. I've done pretty good about not backing quarterbacks that I think are terrible, but I do think that there's just a little bit more I need to take consideration about can this team move the ball if they're behind, and I'm looking at you, New York Giants. We'll move to Monday night before we come back to three games on Sunday's card, which we'll snake draft to discuss what we want to, as opposed to being stuck with a London ice bleeder, eye bleeder, nose bleeder, whatever, on the Halloween. Wow. No, I'm looking too far in advance. No, the 28th. The Giants, speaking of, 6.5 point underdogs on the road at Pittsburgh. Totals 36.5 on this one. We've seen some movement here, too. When it was announced that Russell Wilson would be starting, or basically made it pretty clear, like Tomlin did, we saw a 4 point underdog. The New York Giants dropped down to 3.5. And then that changed significantly now to the 6.5 we're seeing. The total has dropped from 38 down to 36.5, which I think is probably a reference to the Giants' struggles with Philadelphia last weekend. But Philly's defense is decent, and they look like a playoff team or expected to be coming into the year. Have a good win over the Packers, though very different states of play, I think, today. And game was also in Brazil, which does mean something. The Giants go on the road as 6.5 point underdogs. They've been big underdogs at home to the Giant. Excuse me, I am talking about the Giants to the Bengals, a 4 point underdog at close, 3.5 or 3 to the Eagles this past weekend at home. Now they go on the road where Daniel Jones has been better, but I don't know that lacking Boo Birds away from home does anything for him. What do we think about this one? Is this another boring standalone Monday Night Football game?
Well, I was trying to be positive with the Giants. I thought they've played better the last few weeks. Dable came out after that game and just talked about how nothing went right and that it was bad coaching, bad playing, bad performance overall. So I don't really take that away. They'd actually shown some fight in recent weeks. Even that Cowboys game, a couple calls go the different way, and it's a different result. Um, I don't like the Steelers to me. It makes me I get worried if I were backing the Giants, what that defensive line might do against the Giants offensive line that they patched together in the offseason a little bit better than average, maybe average. Um, that makes me really, really nervous with a quarterback that's not known for making the best decisions and is injury prone. Um, Also, though, like the Steelers offense, quarterback not known to make the best decisions. And
Makes great social media videos, though.
like last week we talked about it. I feel like I should have listened. I don't know, I think you went for it, but like I was talking about how the Jets run defense couldn't stop anything. and the Steelers and Najee Harris had a great game. Jalen Warren got in the mix, and they dominated. It's hard to look at the Steelers as a 6.5 point favorite to really, I don't know if anybody in the league, but yeah, I mean, I would probably lean Steelers here again and
So
feel maybe not even watch. I may like just pretend like it doesn't exist and then just watch the replay because I wouldn't want to watch how it all went down.
I think the Giants to me, I mean, they should have covered against the Bengals. A simple,
Yes.
a lot of
Yeah.
guys do Brian Westbrook style, get a first down and slide if you're Chase Brown, though I understand he's trying to win that job and just fumbled. So maybe that's what he was doing. And honestly, getting that touchdown makes a big difference on your contract, probably, and incentives and such. So I don't blame him, but very close to a first down in that game and covering. And maybe I feel better about the Giants. But really a nothing game. And I finally I forgot I wasn't even watching the Eagles Giants when I was getting my other 5 games set up pretty much right in front of my face on Sunday. And I was like, okay, well, I haven't missed much. And this is a good time for the Giants as a home underdog. But as soon as the Eagles scored and they converted a fourth down for a long touchdown to make it 14-0, like there was almost no hope in me in the Giants crowd or anything like that. Going away from home, maybe they play better. But I just feel like the limitations on the Giants offense, which even with Neighbors back last week, I thought that would be a big boost. It didn't seem to be as much, though he certainly helps the other receivers because demands a lot of attention. But I just don't think the Giants at this dink and dunk offense that takes 14 plays to move 3 downs at a time to get a first down, and they might go for it on a 4th and 1. Yeah, that's great at protecting their defense. It keeps the games low scoring, which I think is maybe why we're looking at this total fall so much. But I think there's also a big question about Russell Wilson. Doesn't seem like a turnover magnet, but some of the throws he was making when he was getting booed off the field early in Sunday Night Football were just so far away from his receivers. It was incredible. And a lot of, I mean, what seemed like a pretty close game with the Jets leading at halftime turned into a blowout in amazing fashion. But I think this is going to be a low scoring game. I probably lean under as my biggest interest in this one. The spread feels big, but I feel like if the Steelers get 14, that might be enough, as weird as it sounds, because I just don't think this Giants offense, even with Neighbors, is capable. And I mean, Daniel Jones is under extreme duress in this matchup with the Pittsburgh Steelers D line being, I think, biggest game changer in all of pro football. We move now to the Sunday card, or back to the Sunday card, because we've covered Thursday, we've covered Monday and Sunday Night Football. We got 3 games to discuss. Where would you like to go first?
Do you want the most intriguing game
Well, you have two
or
choices, so you get to do it. I know where I'm going for mine, unless you pick
you
it.
know? Okay, well then let's talk about this one first because this is uh certainly the best narrative one. The TV networks are loving this.
Okay.
Chicago Bears at Washington, as long as Jaden Daniels is healthy or is able to play, which I think he probably will, but we'll see.
Well, based on this number, I'm not sure he is playing.
Well,
Currently,
maybe not for this number, but
Chicago Bears are -1.5 right now on the road at Washington. Total is 43.5. Chicago coming off a bye after a dominant victory at Jacksonville. Well, technically, because the London Jags is a thing. Um, and the Bears, didn't get any of the money, it seemed, on Sunday as the Jags were getting bet and bet and bet. Bears closed an underdog somehow in London to an awful team, but took care of business, fell behind early, but then made it kind of out of reach pretty quickly. We got a battle of the top 2 picks in the NFL draft from last season, which we had both attended in Detroit in honor of one of our good friends and his bachelor party. Congratulations, Derek. I hope marriage treats you as well as I'm sure it's treated all of America and the world. I think the Bears is a 1.5 point favorite away from home feels really expensive and tells me that Jaden Daniels is not playing. If he is playing and this is our number, then that tells me there's a lot less respect for the Washington Commanders defense because that seems to be where the problem is. Jaden Daniels with a rib injury, I believe it was. I mean, there's big concerns about him getting hit again and getting re-injured. That's a problem for sure, and is definitely a big concern of mine. But as a home underdog, I don't think I would let that keep me away. Marcus Mariota is not exactly who I want to be backing in this world, I gotta say, but
no.
looked competent last week against one of the worst teams in NFL history, probably in the Carolina Panthers. I don't know that says much, but I don't know what Caleb Williams has done to deserve to be 1.5 point favorite on the road against a true NFL team that's been competing. Because I think he's I mean, I have never been a big fan. Probably going to Oklahoma doesn't help with my biases, but I just feel like the Bears defense has gotten a ton of credit. I think Jaden Daniels changes any sort of defense he's playing against because there's an extra thing you have to worry about on every single play. And I gotta say, I feel like the Commanders, it's not really the most fun stadium to get to. Landover, Maryland, far away from DC, far away from anything really. But I feel like the Commanders crowd is back in, and that does make me interested in the home underdog.
This may be so. I'm not a doctor. We need to put that on record
Okay.
so
Well, there's
everyone
a lot of
knows.
Twitter doctors out there for sure. You can,
So, but with ribs, to me, like I don't think it can get worse. Like he's gonna have a flak jacket, all the things to protect it right there. To me, it feels like it may be more of a pain tolerance type deal,
okay.
or get some assistance in the first half to maybe not feel that pain as much, if you know what I mean.
I do. A little Toradol
And
hurt.
this may be an opportunity here just to strategically take a number, especially if we're around that zero, we're around the one. I know we had that little diatribe to start the episode, but could be an opportunity here to take the Commanders plus 1.5 early right now, Tuesday night. Let's just see where this thing goes. Like no one's really practiced at this point. We don't really know what's going to happen with Jaden Daniels. If he's ruled out, like you said, this number is already shaded that way. How much more are we going to move if it's Marcus Mariota starting? Um, how much? Like, what do you think? Are we
That
getting the
sounds like
three?
you want to gamble, which I mean, this is what the Betting Pitch Podcast Network is about, technically. But I mean,
I think it's about making an informed decision based off of what we have available.
I think if you have information that Jaden Daniels is playing, you play 1.5 right now. I
Sure.
don't. If you don't have that information, I think you are taking a risk that you get Marcus Mariota at 1.5, and that's probably a worse number than you would expect. And I think it probably climbs to 3 with him out. I don't
I
know
think it goes to three.
necessarily. Like 3 feels like a big number for it to get to. Maybe it doesn't crawl over the 2 and 2.5 all the way to 3. But I feel like there's a good chance it probably gets there because those numbers aren't hard to pass through. Does it hit like 4 or 5 or 6? Probably not. But because I do feel like a little bit baked in this number now is that the Bears are just better than the Commanders. And if Jaden Daniels plays, this number sticks. Which then in that case you've lost nothing. So I guess that is of interest because and then you are basically taking the risk that if Jaden Daniels plays and this moves to Washington being a favorite at home, then you've done really well and you got a great CLV closing line value, and you can throw that ticket in the garbage can, light it on fire, and keep your family warm as you're homeless on the street.
Right.
So, I mean, that's all good for a Twitter narrative for sure. I feel like, I mean, if you're a believer in Washington or just a believer in Jaden Daniels playing this matchup, I think you're totally right. Grab the 1.5.
I
I'm
think
not sure. I'm not sure that I think that there's enough there for me to want to have Mariota at this number, and I think that'll keep me away from it.
I think if Jaden Daniels is ruled in, this number goes to 3.5. Washington, just
That's
based off of the
that's
respect
a
of the
big move.
market.
That's a big
Just
move. So
based
then
off the respect of the market. I mean, look at like there were 6-point favorites on the road at Baltimore.
uh close 7 point
Six
underdog.
point underdog, sorry. But
Close
yes,
7 point underdogs were 6 during our podcast on that Tuesday. So moved about a point with perfect health in that situation. So if you think that, so,
if he's
and
playing like yeah, I
it's
don't
early in the
it's
week,
hard to
we're playing
know.
this out live. Tough to do on a recorded line, of course. But
I think this has been
uh,
one of our better episodes.
I mean, I think it could be, it shows that we're out here trying to think about this just like odds makers are themselves. They're putting numbers out there. The nice part is they move where the money tells them to. We're trying to figure out where that money's going to come. And it's not a perfect science and it's not rocket science, but it's also probably closer to rocket science than it is a perfect science. I think if the Commanders move to 3.5, like you just said, that's a pretty big move, and I think this number is saying that Jaden Daniels is out. So if you have
Yeah,
information he's not out, this is probably the best number you're going to get.
yeah, for sure.
Um, and you probably want to jump in. In the interest of time, I'll move to
Yeah.
another quarterback situation. Then you have one more pick, then we'll get to our best bet. So we should have enough time, I think. But I'll move to South Beach and the Miami Dolphins, a 3-point favor right now to the Arizona Cardinals. Total is 46 and a half. And this number to me is suggesting that Marcus Mariota is not playing because that's a different game. That Tua
Yep.
Tagovailoa is going to come back. I don't know how I conflated those two. Maybe it's the Hawaiians together. Um, but I mean, I'm not sure that I believe that. And I got to say, the fate of the Miami Dolphins, I feel like I've been doing it with the Titans, the Colts, every chance I have. And I still don't understand. They played a pretty close game last week and maybe deserved to beat the Colts, but really toughly, poorly timed Raheem Mostert fumble really turned things around, plus a missed field goal doinked off an upright. And then a late field goal from Matt Gay that went straight through for a cover, which was pretty nice and was the best bet winner for our episode last week. Um, but the Cardinals coming off a short week have to go east, play in an early game where the sun field does seem to matter here,
Mhm.
as they will be in the sun the entire whatever first half of the game for a while of it, and that will bake the Cardinals. So they're certainly used to some sun in Arizona, to say the least. I do think that matters a little bit, but not enough to make the Dolphins a 3-point favorite. What do you think about this one?
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, Tua's going to play. Um, we know what.
If he's not, you got a great number. So you're
Yeah,
doing it there.
you know, he's going to play. This offense was fine when he was great, or when he was, I shouldn't say great, when he was healthy and everything was before this past concussion. I wouldn't say it was like, I mean, it was only a couple weeks in, but we neither of us were just wowed with what they were doing. I certainly think from a fantasy perspective, some people might be excited to get to a back for some of those other weapons. But um, yeah, I mean, the factors you laid out there, it's what would keep me away from Arizona. Um, even though like I'm with you, like this whole the fading of the Dolphins, why should we stop now kind of situation until they prove it. But yes, you're like the West Coast team traveling all the way across the sun, that's spot on. Like they practice indoors, they practice in the, like, avoiding those elements.
Yep.
It's going to be humid no matter what, even late October there. Those are kind of some of the things, but like again, like I feel like sometimes people try to get too cute with these things, and you're just kind of spot on with how you've been viewing the Dolphins. Um, Tyler Huntley was better, I thought, in the last week or so. They had the bye week. The Tennessee game, I would throw that out because he was with the team for like 8 days total, and this offense is based on rhythm. Like you can't just ask for some quarterback who just learned the playbook to work within rhythm like that. So that would be your counter to saying, oh, Tua, he's going to get the ball out fast. They're gonna put those playmakers in good spots. But yeah, I mean, I still feel like I lean towards the Cardinals in this spot.
I don't love it for a lot of the reasons listed, but I also don't know even Tua Tagovailoa coming back. Like, who knows if he's going to be like sharp? And it's been a while since he's
Right.
played practice, all those sort of things. We've seen a bunch of numbers and games finish below three, so I think that push on three is still important. At the real underscore G Warner, maybe to his latest chagrin, is saying that three is a key number. It still exists. Last for a underscore Snicker game you want to discuss. Tell me what it is. I'll read the line, then we'll get to best bets.
Okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's go back. I'm trying to decide between two division matchups. Just because of some changes with, yeah, let's go with the Falcons at Tampa Bay.
All right. Atlanta, a 2.5-point favorite on the road at Tampa. Total is 46. A lot of injuries in this one as well, with Mike
Yeah.
Evans likely out with a hamstring. And it looked like Chris Godwin done for the season, potentially. At least that's what happens when you have an air cast and you're carted off the field. Falcons, pretty big favorite after a pretty much no show last week against Seattle Seahawks, maybe due to some offensive line injuries, maybe due to Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, what I'm most intrigued with this one is I thought Baker Mayfield's been one of the best. He and Jared Goff have been two of the better quarterbacks this year.
Hope you have those MVP tickets from before the season started.
That's right. And without Godwin, who has just been having, a career year, um, Evans, obviously, I think he's out too. Uh, I love what they've been doing on offense, and I'm just really intrigued to see. The Falcons just absolutely, we were both, I was shocked at what happened against Seattle. It's like a classic NFL type situation. You're like, no, everything lines up perfectly. And of course, the other team goes out there and dominates. In turn, we're talking about Seattle against Atlanta. Um, this game, this is a rematch from like 3 weeks ago where Atlanta, Kirk Cousins had 500 yards and uh, Tampa's healthier, but this is going to be a short week. You've got no wide receivers. At what point are these cluster injuries for the Bucks actually going to hit home? Because we thought it was going to happen with the secondary. I guess to mixed results, it did happen. Um, but the Falcons, I guess, like everything just seems to be lining up for them. Seems like every spot is pretty perfect. They have one of the easiest schedules going in. Um, I guess do you see the Falcons being able to replicate what they were able to do, and what do you think the Bucks offense is going to be without these playmakers?
Good question. I don't think the Bucks can run the football, and I think that's a big, big problem.
Yeah,
Wide receiver injuries are things where you can't really replace them because they're great at separating from defensive backs, and the backups just simply aren't. I think the move to Atlanta, a favorite away from home, because I saw this as Atlanta an underdog literally until these games happened this week. Big move to favored Atlanta now. I don't trust them. Was pretty disappointed in the performance last week. It kind of game all turned on a missed field goal, and then they get a turnover, and then things kind of get out of hand. But Atlanta was trailing that whole game, so I mean, I think Seattle was the right side in that one, which I did not have. I think Tampa's been a team I wanted to back, but and I would if they were healthy here, but the number wouldn't be this way. And I just, man, I don't know. This feels like one of those NFC South, anything that can happen here, which makes me lean to the home underdog. But I think the injuries are something we need to pay attention to. We'll move now to our best bet part of the show. We are 8-6, like I said, start the season, and we got to find some winners on this episode. We were 1-1 last week. Got a good start to the season, won 20 of our last 32 for a nice 62.5, 63% for rounding, which we are. At _Schnicker, where do you want to go for your best bet on this Tuesday, October 22nd for this weekend's NFL slate?
we're gonna go to a fairly big underdog, but it's a divisional matchup. These two teams have played each other tight for the last 2 years, and it's basically the same cast of characters. So we're gonna go to NRG Stadium. We're gonna take the Indianapolis Colts +6 against the Houston Texans.
Okay, give me a little bit more. So, what makes you believe? Is it Anthony Richardson? Is it a hopeful injury that turns into Joe Flacco?
That's always our hope, right? It's just every week hoping for that. Houston's offense is not clicking. I am in that camp that Nico Collins has made a pretty big difference, even though they have other playmakers. That if you actually dug into the game against the Packers, their offense, there were a lot of points in that first half, but it was kind of fluky. And I also think that they're dealing with a lot of defensive injuries as well. Anthony Richardson is terrifying to back. However, these two teams have played tight games, and if you look at the standings, I mean, the Colts are 4-3; they're right there in it. I think everyone's just, yeah, I think we're there.
Sounds good. Hey, this is the real _G Warner. This is Betting the Pitch NFL edition. You just might have heard our podcast. We're 8-6 so far to start the season. Won 20 of our last 32. A nice 63% run. At _Schnicker just gave out his best bet on this episode, and that was Indianapolis Colts, a 6-point underdog on the road at Houston. For my best bet, the real _G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, and on YouTube. I'm going to go with the game we talked about on this podcast. We covered a 6-pack of games, and you might as well check it out on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or on YouTube to make sure you catch our takes on the 6 most popular games / the standalones and the ones we wanted to talk. But I'm going to go with one we talked about. The Arizona Cardinals, a 3-point underdog on the road at the Miami Dolphins. I'm not a believer in Tua Tagovailoa. I'm not a believer in Miami Dolphins. I'm not a believer in their Sun Field. And at this point, they're going to have to prove it to me until I get off the fade Miami train. So grab the Indianapolis Colts +6 at _Schnicker's best bet, and grab mine at the real _G Warner, Arizona +3. And that'll do it for this episode as we are running out of time. We'll talk to you all very soon. Have a great evening, and make sure you follow, subscribe, hit 5-star reviews because we love you.